Awareness, the final frontier. These are the explorations of Jonathan Robinson and Brian Tom O'Connor. Their continuing mission, to discover fresh new paths to the mystery within, to seek out new joys and new methods of awakening, to boldly go into the heart of expanded consciousness. This is Awareness Explorers.
Well, welcome back, Awareness Explorers. Good to have you as part of our family again, exploring the inner cosmos. I'm Jonathan Robinson, and I'm with my co-host right here,
Brian Tom O'Connor.
And I'm newly back from a retreat with Adyashanti, a well-known spiritual teacher. And I'm wondering what you've been up to, Brian.
Well, I haven't been on a retreat. I've just been here in New York, where the weather has been cold, except today it's spring-like. But I love the idea that you went on a week-long retreat. As a matter of fact, I know that Adyashanti's retreats are silent retreats. And although I've been on retreats, I've never been on a silent one. So I'm really curious how that was.
Well, why don't we talk about retreats, both my experience and the value of retreats, maybe the disadvantages of them, and how they relate to becoming a more aware, conscious human beings. Does that sound like a good idea?
Great idea. Let's do it.
Of course, we didn't rehearse any of this, but anyways, so before I blab about retreats and everything I know about them, I think it's important to realize that really almost every spiritual tradition has recommended that people occasionally take retreats or vision quests or fast or do something to separate themselves from their normal daily life. And I'm wondering what experience you've had with that, if any.
I do think that taking a break from your ordinary life is very important. And when you go on a retreat, you don't have to worry about what to do. I mean, your time there is without pressure. And to a certain extent, if you can, leave your responsibilities behind, it's without responsibility. So you can really just focus on looking within. And any time that you can do that for short or long periods, I think is great.
Yeah, it's a nice spiritual tool, and not just a spiritual tool, a life tool, which nowadays you probably need more than ever because I don't know about your life, Brian. Actually, I do, but I'll say that anyways. I do know that everybody's life now is a little bit too fast, too much stimulation, too many things going on. And to be able to put that on hold and reboot yourself is really necessary. It's also quite a discipline. You know, just getting ready for the Adyashanti retreat was a whole thing in of itself, because he doesn't allow you to use your smartphone or computer or any of that stuff during the retreat. And to be able to be free of those things for a week really takes something. You kind of have to simplify your life. You have to tell everybody that you're not available. It's a little bit like getting ready for dying. You're letting go of a lot of stuff and trying to wrap up all the loose ends so you can really be there. And I find even if I didn't make it to the retreat, just doing that would have been valuable.
Yeah, it's sort of like getting your affairs in order, paying your bills and letting people know you're going to be gone, saying goodbye.
Yeah, the whole thing. It really felt like this is a little taste of what dying is like, and trying to have a clean, simple enough life where you can actually do that, which is not easy. But before I go into what I learned and some points I want to make, I'm wondering what you're curious about in terms of the retreat I was at.
Well, there's a couple things I'm curious about. Of course, the main one is what it's like to be on a silent retreat. I understand that other than when you're asking questions in the actual sessions with the teacher, in this case, Adyashanti, you're not talking to each other. You're not talking over lunch. You're not going back to your cabin or your room and getting on your cell phone and talking to people. As a matter of fact, you're not using your cell phone or your computer at all, even outside of the meditation room. So what is that like? What happens to your mind over time as you do this?
Well, the first thing you notice is it's not silent because you still have the voice in your head that you're talking to all the time. And it's often complaining about, we can't do this and we can't do that. But once you get through that phase, which can take anywhere from 20 minutes to 20 days, I think it's really wonderful because normally we're always kind of doing some kind of social dance with people, hey, that woman's cute, or that guy's an idiot, or whatever. And knowing that you're not going to actually interact with them, you finally let go of that social dance, and you can then use that extra energy to go within and just be with yourself. Because we have Facebook, we have people at the office, we're always talking on the phone, and we lose this connection, this intimacy with ourselves. And in a situation where you realize you have a week where you're not going to be talking to anybody, you sooner or later say, well, I think I'll just kind of see what I'm like, and maybe learn new things about him. And it's really a freedom after a while. So that part I learned to like, although the first day I found myself wanting to smile at people or whatever, or my roommates, I roomed with a couple people. But after a while, it was really a freedom and allowed me to go into places in me that I hadn't been to for quite a while.
Did you tend to not even make eye contact with people along the way, or you did that, just not talk?
Adyashanti recommended that we not make eye contact with people because that's a way of communicating and letting your energy out. I mean, sometimes we'd be on a trail together and our eyes would kind of meet because we didn't want to run into each other. But for the most part, I really tried to stay within. Now, of course, this being an Adyashanti retreat, there were 300 people there. So sometimes that wasn't easy, but they made it pretty easy, meaning all the food was taken care of. You really didn't have to think or do anything. And that was part of the advantage of being on a formal retreat, is that your food and the schedule were completely taken care of. So there was really nothing to think about.
And what is the aim of the silence? What is the reason? I know some teachers don't have silent retreats. For example, Rupert Spira emphasizes that his retreats are about friendship and sharing and talking. And he emphasizes that, and he likes that, and I think there's value to that. But I think there's also value to the other. But I'm curious as to what the stated goal of that long a time in silence is.
Well, to the extent there was a stated goal, I think it was that you would put all your energy on going within, eliminating smartphones, eliminating connecting with people. That he said a retreat is really a retreat from the distractions you have to knowing yourself. So that's really what his stated goal was. But I want to mention that there really are many different types of retreats, and a silent retreat isn't necessarily the best one. It's different. Vanilla ice cream is not better than chocolate. It's just different. Or Haagen-Dazs is not better than, actually Haagen-Dazs is better than Ben & Jerry's. So some things do.
That's debatable.
Okay, well, we'll have to agree to disagree on that. But, there's silent retreats. There's the type that Rupert does where it's more social. I've also been on retreats where they were really focused on a specific method that was more like a basketball drill camp, where you're just practicing drills. Like I did a Sedona method retreat in which we sat across from someone 8 hours a day and we just practiced the Sedona method back and forth. So that's a very different type of retreat. And nowadays, you have to mention there's retreats that are drug retreats, like ayahuasca retreats. People go to Peru or to a 2-day event and they leave everything behind and they ingest some mind-expanding drug and hopefully get value out of that. So I think it's different strokes for different folks. I found all of them to be useful in different ways, but the one that obviously I have the most experience with are basically silent meditation retreats.
And how was this past retreat for you? How did you experience it?
Well, life consists of a lot of moments. So some of those moments I was in a state of bliss. Some of the moments I felt like my body and head was about to explode. You know, when you're meditating 8 hours a day or whatever we were doing, you know, energies start happening. And there were some moments that were really hard where I kind of got stuck in a mental loop. Every now and then Ajahn Shanti would have some time for questions and answers. And I found it curious that hardly anybody asked questions. What they did is they wanted to tell him his life story while 300 people watched. And Ajahn would say, "Do you have a question?" The person would say, "Wait just a minute while I tell you the rest of my life story." And I had a lot of anger come up at these people, especially the first few days. And then eventually I realized, well, that's what they need. They need to tell their life story to him and feel accepted or loved for who they were. And over time, I dropped my self-righteous anger and more felt compassion for these people and getting what they wanted and needed. So a retreat is a lot of different things depending on the moment. But for me, the most valuable part was I would occasionally see or learn something new about myself. You know, it's like a retreat is like digging a well. You know, in daily life, when we use tools, it's often like digging a well 1 foot deep. You know, you meditate for 10 minutes, you dig a 10-foot deep well. A retreat is like digging one well 500 feet deep, you know, and it's more likely you're going to strike oil. It's more likely you're going to see something that is a possibility for you in the future, you know, like a forevision. And I did get that. So now I have certain, I don't know what I'd call it, certain earmarks of this is where this can go. And that has motivated me to look for new levels of stillness as well as new methods of getting there. Because sometimes Ajahn Shanti would say, try this or try that. And I'd try it, and sometimes it didn't work. And I'd try it, and sometimes I'd say, ooh, that's a keeper.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of different moments. But once you see something about yourself, you can't unsee it. And part of what I saw were new shadow material that I can't unsee now. That's good. Or new possibilities that have stayed with me. For example, Ajahn Shanti would sometimes say, feel or listen to the stillness. Well, before the retreat, that didn't really mean anything to me. I'd probably heard those words, but it didn't really mean anything. But now when he said, listen to the stillness, it was like, are you friggin' kidding me? How can you not listen to the stillness? It's screaming at me. How could somebody miss the absolute blare of the stillness? This is the easiest way to get into a place of quiet and awareness. How is not everybody using that method?
Yeah, stillness is, I think, such a great metaphor, along with silence and spaciousness are all terrific metaphors for that clear, infinite, wide open space in which everything appears. And that's what I think looking within is all about.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the other thing is when you're really quiet, you start to see how numb we normally are. You know, that we're not really taking in our senses, or we're not really taking in other people's words. So I had the experience of sometimes Ajahn Shanti would say something and it would be like a simple sentence. I'll give you an example. It won't mean anything to you probably. It literally brought me to tears when I heard this. And I just couldn't believe how revelatory or beautiful it was. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I remember back in my drug days, I would sometimes write pot revelations. I'd get stoned and I'd write down what struck me as like the greatest revelation in the world. I'd take a piece of paper and I'd write down what I was thinking. And the next morning I would read it and I would say something like, "This room smells funny."
That's right. I remember thinking we all thought the phrase, "life is what you make it," was the deepest piece of wisdom and absolutely hilarious because it was a pun on Jamaica because one of us had just come back from Jamaica.
Right, right.
And this we thought was profound. And then, yes, the next day, not so profound.
Well, the reality is it is profound. If you could, I don't know about the room smelling funny, but life is what you make it.
Uh-huh.
But, normally we're on to the next thing and thank you for your opinion that life is what you make it. I have to pay some bills today, or what's the next email?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the profound things he said was letting go is a devotional act. And why that struck me is I always thought of letting go as something I do in order to feel better and not get stuck in negative emotions or whatever. But when he said letting go is a devotional act, I saw that this is my way of like serving creation, to not get stuck in my mental loops, my emotional loops. And that when I am getting stuck in them, I'm really basically saying, no thank you, God, or no thank you, creation. I'm busy doing my mental masturbation. So when he said letting go is a devotional act, I realized this is being aware of awareness and being present to my experience in this moment in an unattached way is an act of devotion that can really come from my heart and be a form of service. And that was very, very powerful for me.
Wow, and that can bring together the two paths, the paths of love and the paths of knowledge, or Yanni and Bhakti, or Yana, I don't know how you pronounce it. Yana and Bhakti that people often talk about. This can sort of synthesize them in a way.
Exactly. And, my mind was blown by that statement. And I'm sure our listeners who are probably driving their car or doing something, they go, yeah, that's a nice statement. Mm-hmm. But it only can really touch the deepest parts of your being when you've created this, 3, 5, 7 days of absolute quiet within yourself where you're not going anywhere and something can touch something deeper, call it your soul or whatever. But I'm still diving into that statement as well as a couple other things he said.
Sure. Well, let's unpack letting go just for a little bit because we've talked about this on this program before. A lot of people think letting go means getting rid of, and it's not. It really means almost the opposite. You're letting go of wanting anything to be different than it is. Is that what the kind of letting go that you're referring to here?
Yeah, you're letting go of things being different than they are. And you're basically saying, I will fully allow and accept creation, and that there is not better than here. We're always trying to manipulate our experience. Ajashanti was saying, that's a loser. That just leads to more manipulation. And the key to freedom is being able to fully allow what is to be here. And that will eventually lead to the opening and the awareness that is what is true freedom. it's a tough lesson to get because sometimes this does feel better than that, and I want to keep this and reject that. But if I realize that when I'm doing that, I'm doing violence to God, or I'm doing violence to my soul, or whatever you want to call it, and the other is really an act of love, then it brings in a new energy. It brings in a heart energy that perhaps was lacking in me.
And another thing about letting go for me is it's not necessarily something that you, or at least that the ego part of you or the mental part of you actually can do, because the function of the mind and the ego is to fix things or to change things or to look at what's wrong and do something about it, or to look at what's desired and figure out a way to get it. But there is a part deep within us that has already let go. Its nature is letting go. And that's pure awareness, because it allows everything to appear in it, and it accepts things as they are unconditionally. And that's love. And I think we've talked about that a lot on this show, and that's why we call it Awareness Explorers, because it's there, it's love, it's accepting, it's already let go.
Yeah. I agree with what you just said. I think, though, there are some things the ego can do. Like the ego can certainly insist that things be different, and you can create an ego that says, no, I'm going to allow things to be as they are.
Sure, the ego can get you started. The ego can
Can get you
decide,
started.
yeah, I'm going to start asking these questions. I'm going to maybe look in this direction. Maybe I'm going to turn around and look in. You're right. The ego can take some steps. It can get you started.
Yeah. It can't do the final step, because the final step involves going beyond it.
Yes.
But it can, if you have a good spiritual ego that's well grounded and not so paranoid, it can point you in the right direction.
Yeah, it can. And then when the time comes, it can step aside.
Yeah. The other thing I think to talk about in terms of retreats, though, is that there are disadvantages to them as well. And people often don't talk about that. So I'd like to mention some of them. One of them is that they can be hard. They're not all flowers and rose petals and singing hallelujah.
Or a vacation on the beach.
Right. If you want a vacation on the beach, take a vacation on the beach. Because sometimes, I've done a 10-day Vipassana retreat before as well. And I remember maybe 3 of those days were like hell. They were really difficult. So sometimes you have to be realistic and say, well, some of this is going to be fun, but some of it might not be. And then there's, of course, the cost. Adyashanti keeps his costs pretty low, but some retreats can cost thousands of dollars, and that can hold you back. I think if you look for it, there's some things online you can get where you can do like a day-long retreat for very little money in your own house. And in fact, I'm part of an organization like that, where once a month they do a 5-hour retreat, kind of guided. And that's nice. But the cost can sometimes run up. I noticed that most of the people at Adyashanti's retreat were in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. They didn't have kids at home. They probably had a fair amount of money, and they could do this. So I think online retreats are a possible thing, or even creating your own retreat at home where you decide for the next 8 hours, doing an hour of meditation, maybe 20 minutes of walking meditation, take a break, do that again, that those are possibilities, because, cost and time are big factors.
Hey, maybe we should do that. Maybe we should do like a 2-person online retreat for a day or two, and then report back to our listeners what that was like.
That's a possibility. Yeah.
Something to explore.
Or if our listeners are interested in us guiding a online retreat with them sometime, let us know, and we'll consider that as a possibility as
Oh,
well.
yeah, sure.
Another disadvantage of retreats is that they are separate from life, and always a little suspicious of methods that take a long time that separate you from life, because I think that can be creating a compartment. I call it compartmentalization. And one of the disappointments I had with the Ajahn retreat, maybe the only one, was that he really didn't talk about integrating this into your life. And I think integration is really key.
Yes. Well, this is something I've thought about quite a bit because one of the most common questions you hear at retreats, especially someone who's been on several before, is, okay, I went on the retreat and I was blissful and it was lovely and I was relaxed and I was calm and I left the retreat and I got home and all hell broke loose. I
Yeah.
got tense again, anxiety came back in, and to me, that in a way is a problem of expectations. And I think it would be a good idea for a retreat leader to manage expectations in such a way that people understand that when you go to a retreat and you're leaving your outside world behind for a while, you're actually practicing in a safe environment, in a safe place. In other words, you're looking within when it's quiet, when it's peaceful, and when you don't have a lot of distractions. And in a way, you're actually practicing to go out into the world. But then if bang, you're going from the easy practice to the most difficult one in one step, that's an unreasonable expectation. So you really, I think, have to take it in easy steps. Like when you leave the retreat, don't expect everything to be beautiful, but find a time, maybe a half hour the next day, when you can just sit quietly, turn off the phone, and bring a little bit of that back. And then maybe slightly harder situation, you're actually interacting with people. Look within, find the awareness that's experiencing it. And then gradually you increase the difficulty of the very thing that you practiced in the easy and calm situation at the retreat.
Yeah, well said. And I think being deliberate about that and earmarking the time for it is really important. When you don't do that and you're just quiet and retreat and then you hit your life running, I think you lose a lot of the advantages of taking a retreat. It's important to note that there's also really different lengths of retreats. I mean, I could say tomorrow I'm doing a 3-hour retreat. I put in my schedule. That's different than a friend of mine who just did a 6-month retreat.
Right. I can't imagine that.
I can't
Well,
imagine it either.
I can imagine it, but I think weekend retreats are nice. I think a week-long retreat is great. 6 months, wow, that's arduous. And of course, you have to have the kind of life where you can do that, which not very many people have.
Right. But I think in the case of retreats, anything is better than nothing, because especially in this day and age where we have this nonstop going, that's very harmful after a while. And it's also, in terms of a historical perspective, it's really unique. Cultures throughout history have always done vision quests or retreats of various kinds, and that it is not just something where you learn about yourself and meditation, but a lot of times a lot of my best work ideas have come during retreats, meaning a new book, and this happened during this retreat. I've been wondering what my next step is in terms of work, and a new idea came about and now I'm working on it. So I think to see it as part of a balanced life in which you can get re-inspired and re-motivated and sometimes redirected is really key. And one great way of doing that is to actually schedule these. Now with Ajahn, you actually have to sign up like a year in advance because his retreats sell out. But that was helpful because a year in advance, I didn't have anything scheduled at the last week of September. It's like, hey, I'm totally free that week. I might as well schedule it.
Sure. And then after the retreat is over, maybe schedule some mini retreats on your own,
Yeah.
some hour-long retreats. Go on a 5-minute retreat several times.
Exactly. So any final words before we do a guided meditation?
I guess the only last thing I have to say about retreats is that when you were talking about the disadvantages and you were talking about how they're apart from life, I think that's true. And I think one other disadvantage could be that we think we're going to go on a retreat because we're going to become enlightened. And then we go on the retreat to get this thing that's somehow there at the retreat that we're going to bring into ourselves. And when we realize that enlightenment isn't something out there or in the future that we bring into us and that we get, it's actually our natural state, and it's available to us anytime, 24/7, in retreat, outside of retreat, busy or relaxed and calm. It's actually there, looking out through our eyes, not judging, not choosing, not discriminating, just loving.
Yeah, that mindset can get in the way of us realizing it's always here and it's always now.
But you can learn that at a retreat and then
You can.
take it away.
Uh-huh.
But I'd love to hear the meditation that you have for us.
Well, this one was inspired by Adyashanti, and I think it was very impactful on me. I'll do a maybe 10-minute version of it now. When he did it, it was actually 25 minutes. So get ready to be rocketed into deep inner space. Make yourself comfortable. If you can, close your eyes. And as you listen to my voice, notice that there is the awareness of you listening to my voice. And begin to become aware of a sense of spaciousness around your head. Feel the openness there, the space around your head. If you can, notice a quality of expansiveness and openness around your head area. Continue to feel that spacious expansiveness around your head, that clarity. Now see if you can drop down more into your body, into the center of your chest. Imagine you can breathe in to the center of your chest. And just feel the center of your chest, whatever's there. Perhaps you notice a sense of warmth or openness. Maybe even a sense of radiance. When we relax, there's an open sense of well-being that resides in the heart area. Feel its compassion. Receive the heart's love and receptivity to love. Just allow yourself to rest in the warmth and openness of the heart. Notice that this feels slightly different than the energy of spaciousness of the head that you may have felt before. There's a different quality of openness, of warmth, of well-being. Now, I invite you to drop even deeper into your body by allowing yourself to drop into your belly. Feel your breath there. Feel the sense of groundedness and even sobriety or quiet deep within your belly area. Notice the quiet emptiness. Notice the silence deep in your belly area. Allow yourself to rest in the emptiness and silence that's always there. If thoughts arise, just ask, what are those thoughts in? For it's all in awareness. Just rest as awareness. Feel the stillness deep within your belly, the quiet emptiness of now moments, and rest as awareness. And when you're ready, take as much time as you need. Slowly come back to the room you're in. And slowly begin to open your eyes while maintaining a feeling of quiet emptiness, of feeling the silence. And when you're ready, you can move around and enjoy your day.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan. I feel so rested in the silence and calm, and really went deep as it went down from head to the heart to the belly. I loved that.
We can thank Ajashanti for that. I just try to steal from the best.
That's what we've all been doing for thousands of years.
Yep. And speaking of that, feel free to share some of the best with your friends and family, because the more you can support yourself by having friends into the same things, listening to these podcasts and discussing these topics, the more it's going to help everyone to take our next step into our own evolution.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully put.
So, my friend Brian, good to see
Jonathan.
you again.
Good to see you too.
Good to discuss these things and learn from each other. And I hope our audience also feels free to contact us at Awareness Explorers. Tell us what you want, what you don't want, any kind words you have to pass on. Until next time, keep exploring.
Keep exploring. Thank you for listening to Awareness Explorers. To learn more, you can check out our website at awarenessexplorers.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or your favorite podcast app. And we'd love it if you would post a review. And please share our link on Facebook and with family and friends, because knowing yourself as awareness is the greatest gift you can give yourself or someone you love.